Okay, so Chodesh Tov, we are in chapter Hey Shmuel Bet, second Shmuel. So we saw this is a chapter that starts the formal kingdom of David. Actually, the Bible mentions the name, the usual presentation of a new king only here, even though we know David already for book and a half almost. It only starts formally here with the union of all Israel under the kingdom of David. And we see that this chapter is divided to very micro stories, right? A little bit about that, and we saw about that it's maybe, or we can explain that it's like the establishment of the kingdom, the important elements that show that the kingdom of David is established and going to continue, or that it's like the best thing that David did personally and nationally, that is united all Israel. He moved to Jerusalem. He defeated the eternal enemy, the Plishtim, and he built his big house in Jerusalem and had a big family. That also like a sign of prosperity and success. Now, we started to focus on the war in Jerusalem. We saw the differences between the story here and the story in Divrei Hayamim. And we already saw with a nice video, I think the most logic explanation for the pshat, for the literal understanding of the war, what exactly happened. So we saw David offer to be the head of the army, to the person that will defeat Jerusalem. And that was Yoav and Zeruiah. It doesn't mention, it's not mentioned here in Shmuel, it's only mentioned in Divrei Hayamim. Yoav and Zeruiah was the one who could take Jerusalem, and there is some kind of two mysterious things. First of all, there are the Ivrim and Tzischim, the blind and the lames. Lames? Right. The blind and the lames that are the one who David hates, which is, like we said, very discriminative from him. What does it mean that he hates the lame and the blinds, the blinds and the lame? And there is some kind of tzino. Tzino usually we translate today as a tube, that someone should arrive and touch it in order to take Jerusalem. Which again, it's not very clear what does it mean. So we saw that they found the shafts that go from under the walls inside the city, the old city, and that was apparently the source of water, and that Yoav could enter to there and open the gates, or maybe could enter with a group of soldiers, and that was how he took Jerusalem. And what is this blind and lame? Meaning that they, like, there are several explanations that they like mock David. They put there like people that cannot really fight, they are blind and lame. And they said even they can stop you, because the tower was so strong, the city was so well protected that we don't even need real soldiers, right? It's even Ivrin and Psichim that we can that can protect the city. So this is a simple explanation. We had another question that I didn't answer, very also technical issue. We saw already that Yerushalayim was taken in the days of Yoshua, in the war against the kings of the south. Again, in the days of Shoftim, when it says that each tribe took his part in the land of Israel in the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, it's also said that they took Jerusalem the second time. And here we see that still it's not in the hands of the Jews. So what's happened over there? So it's not very hard to understand in the Pshat. When it says that he won the 5 kings, he won the battle that was in the field. They didn't enter the city. It was only, there was a fight that David worked all night, and all the stories, etc. So it's not that they took the city. And then in the days of the Shoftim, they maybe took the city, but didn't stay there. It doesn't say there were several places where the Jews stayed and they didn't stay. And then the Yebusim returned. Or it's also possible that there was 2 parts. Like today, you can see that there is inside the walls and outside the walls, there are also city, right? So if you go to Ir David in Jerusalem today, you can see that it's outside the city. There is exactly also where Siloam, you can go. There just cross one road. So it's topographically, there can be different places of. Ir David, it's outside the walls. Right, so it's where Siloam, there's a village called Siloam. So we can see that there is a city. Between the city and the other mountains around there is like rivers, and then the other mountains can also be cities that can also be called the same name, right? Like San Albert is called Edmonton from outsiders sometimes, something like that, right? So it's like the son of Jerusalem, but they didn't take the city itself, the Metzudah, what is called the Metzudah, this is stronghold. They didn't take the stronghold, but they took the places around it. So this is like to understand the literal meaning. So there is maybe a deeper understanding of all this story, that it's related to the fact that Jerusalem is so central in our history and culture and religion, and that it represents much more than only a city. And that's why David could only start to be considered the King David, the big King David, when he arrived to Jerusalem. And it's the way it was taken, it's also related to that. So returning to the blind and the lame. So Chachamim said something that's a little bit strange, but interesting. They said, who is the blind in our history? Yitzchak. Yitzchak Avinu was blind, he couldn't see it, so he blessed Yaakov instead of Esau. Remember the story? So the blind is Yitzchak. Who is the lame? Yaakov fought against the angel, and he took his leg, and he became the lame. So the blind and the lame are Yitzchak and Yaakov. And they put some kind of idols in the representing Yitzchak and Yaakov. Why? Because they represent the pact, according to Chachamim, that Avimelech did with Avraham. Im tishkor li unili unechdi. It was a pact between Avraham and Avimelech that they won't hurt each other. So from the power of this pact, they couldn't take Jerusalem. So why didn't they do it? Because there was an agreement. So that's why David hated these people. Iver and Pisach, that he hated Yitzchak and Yaakov. He hated the breed, the pact that didn't let him go inside the city. So we understand that there is like an ancient power for the Yevusim that doesn't allow Am Israel to arrive to Jerusalem, which is a place where we want to arrive. And we see in the next chapters where the temple is going to be, and when the tabernacle is going to move, and the ark, etc. So also to understand that a little bit deeper, we can connect that, for there is a famous Gemara about a discussion between Rabbi and Antonio. So there is a Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the one who wrote the Mishnah. He had a very good relationship with the Roman governor in Sipori. It was for all the land of Israel. As they lived together, they say that as a babies, they grew up together. There's a story that the mother of Antoninus, I remember, maybe Antoninus, she saved Rabbi Yehuda Nasi because it wasn't allowed to make Brit Milah. So she changed the babies with the mother of Rabbi Yehuda Levi. There is a story about a long friendship between Rabbi Yehuda and Antonius, but also they had like philosophical discussions or religious discussions between them two. And one of them was that Antonius told Rabbi Yehuda Nasi that after the death, the person can relieve himself from justice, from divine justice, by the following argument. Each one, the soul and the body, can argue that it is innocent. Because they say, the body say, look, now that I'm in the grave, I'm not doing any sins. The only reason I could do sins is because the soul was inside me. And the soul can say, now that I'm without the body, I'm flying in the air, I'm not doing anything bad. Only because of the body, I can sin. So Rabbi Yehuda Levi answering with a mashal, with a metaphor about a king that has a very nice vine, and he wanted to put guards. But he was afraid that the guards themselves are going to steal from the grapes. So what did he do? He put one guard that is blind and one that is lame. So the lame can tell the blind, look, someone coming, right? But it's not, he cannot do that by himself. And then these two, they stole all the grapes. And the king asked them, what happened with the grapes? So they told him, each one say, I'm blind, I cannot do anything. What do you want from me? And the lame say, well, I cannot walk. What do you want from me? So what the king did, he put the blind on the lame, or the opposite, the lame on the blind, and he judged them together. Right? So it says this is the soul and the body. the soul and the body cannot do by themselves, but when they are connected, this is a possibility to have a sin. We can add to that, it's not only the possibility to make sins, it's also the possibility to make mitzvot. Only because of the combination of body and soul, we can act in this world for the good or for the right or the bad. Depends on our free choice. But the possibility of developing and elevating and making things in this world depending in being able to connect body and soul, material and spirits, right? The two things together. Now, the argument against David is that you cannot connect the blind and the lame. You cannot connect the body and the soul. You should choose between living in the heaven or, how do you say, the tower of the academy? It's a Migdal Hashem. How do you say this, the term?
Ivory tower.
Ivory tower. Yeah, we can live in the ivory tower, disconnected from this world, or you can live in this world, enjoy this world, but then there's no next world. It's also the discussion between Yaakov and Esav on the brachot, right? The brachot are material, right? Mitar hashamayim, mishmanei haaretz. So maybe they are for Esav, not for Yaakov. And this combination between spirit and body, between soul and body, and spirit and material, this is the base, the fundamental principle of the kingdom of David. Being able to connect. So kingdom, what is kingdom? King is very, very secular position. He has to take care of taking away the garbage, winning the enemies, building the cities, taking care of the economy. Does he have also spiritual rule to guide Am Israel towards Avodat Hashem, the service of God? And the answer is yes, in the case of King David. Right? We do expect the king to lead Am Israel also spiritually. We know that there is a mitzvah of Akhel when the king in Jerusalem is reading the Torah in front of all Am Israel once in 7 years, and the king is also the judge and is also the spiritual guide, should be. So, of course, we have Kohanim, we have Dayanim, we have rabbis, we have other people that are in charge of the spiritual matters, but you cannot separate. Say, this is secular, this is... Today there is, maybe it's a good thing, that in many countries there is a separation between religion and state, right? We don't want to mix because many times it can cause problems. But in ideal situation, when we have the right king and the right system, it can be mixed and it should be mixed. We want the state of Israel, or the state of Am Israel, not only to take care of the garbage. We want it to be all agreeing. We want it to be the perfect kingdom. And of course, the King David that we are always want to return to the kingdom of David. We say in the tefillah that we want to return to the kingdom of David. This is exactly the representation of the union between body and soul, spirit and material, right? And this is Jerusalem. Jerusalem, העיר שחוברה לה יחדיו, was connected together. Connected what? Again, body and soul. Yerushalayim, יראה שלם, ירא שלם. So there is like shalem is a perfection, the perfection of the two sides of reality. And this is how the kingdom in David. So that's it. So you understand what does it mean that David hates the blind and the lame, right? It's not against people that are blind and people that are lame. Meaning the idea that it's the body and the soul are not connected. They should choose between body and soul. You should choose between next world and this world, right? So this is the thing that David hates because it's against all the very essence of his kingdom, and that's why he has to take Jerusalem. It's also come in the end, right? After he could establish his kingdom. I mean, in the beginning of it, but after a long process, I would say there is a kingdom of Shaul, the kingdom of David in Hebron. And only after all these steps, we are able to arrive to Jerusalem. Still not the end of the journey. We're going to see until the Beit Mikdash. There's a lot to do more. But this is like an essential step that arrive after a lot of preparation, right? That we can take Jerusalem. I always mention that we can see that it's not only in those times, also today. We needed to establish the state of Israel in 48. Only 19 years later, in 67, we could arrive to the old cities. It's not the first time, not the first thing that you do. Jerusalem is during the process, not in the first step. Okay, anyway, this is the second story of this chapter. We saw at the beginning that Am Israel crowned David as a king. Then he took Jerusalem. And then we saw the next story is about his house. So maybe this is the other side, right? You need the king to be in a palace. You need the king to be in a respectful place. It's not have to be like in a tent in the streets. It represents the glory and the honor of Am Yisrael. He also wanted to do Bet Mikdash. This next step, we're going to see that it was delayed for another generation. We're going to see. But here is another interesting point. Who is building the house of David? So let's read the verses. First of all, it says that David occupied the stronghold and renamed it the city of David, Ir David. David also fortified the surrounding area from the Milo inward. I'm not sure about all these details. What does it mean exactly? Yeah. There are different interpretations, but some kind of building the city and the stronghold. And David kept growing stronger, for the eternal, the God of hosts, was with him. And then King Hiram of Tyre in Lebanon, right? So sent envoys to David with cedar logs. Like we say that in Lebanon, there is a lot of cedar.
On the flag.
On the flags. Carpenters, so not only cedars, they are also expert in using these cedars. Right? They have carpenters, special carpenters. Carpenters, not only for building tables, and it's to build in the house and the palace. And stonemason, people that are also expert in building cities with stone, right? וחרשי אבן קיר. And they built palace for David. And again, we see the verse of success. And thus David knew that God has established him as king over Israel and exalted his kingship for the sake of Israel, God's people. Meaning, when you see the success that's also arrived to the material things, to the houses, it's also and this is the glory of the kingdom. It's not only the personal, comfortable place to live, right? It's a Nisa Mamlachto, exalted his kingship, the kingship of David, the kingship of Am Yisrael, for the sake of Israel. So the king is for the country, or the country for the king. So the king is for the country. The fact that there is a palace for the king it's for Am Yisrael. It's not for the king. The fact that we have all these signs of success. But also what we see here, relationship with other nations. So this is interesting that in this chapter we have two stories related to other people or to other nations. We have the good relationship with Tzor, with Lebanon.
It starts only now because they project power. They
Maybe.
Team, so
and then we have, no, but the war with the team is afterward. And then, what?
I'm sorry for the interruptions. Could you, and the verses, exactly, if you are talking about, which is based on from the Torah, could you give it to me exactly the date frame, like he is, which date is BC 350 or, before?
When was the historic time of David? Yeah. It's about 10th BCE, 10th before the Common Era, okay. 10th century before the Common Era. This is usually what today the research locates Davidian history, right? It's around 1,000 years before the Common Era.
About 3,000 years.
About 3,000.
Yeah, about 3,000 years ago, exactly.
Total is 4,000. Maybe it's the equivalence of the happening of 3,000.
What?
The time, the date, which is minimum is 4,000.
What is 4,000?
The 4,000, which is the existence of the Jerusalem.
Jerusalem existed 1,000 years before that.
It always belongs to the Jews.
It wasn't always belongs to the Jews. We see that they took it in the days of David. But we see Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, we see is in the days of Abraham. That was around 1,000 years before. 1,000? No, less. Around 1,000 years before. Around 1,000 years before.
The same.
In Sefer Bereshit, we read stories about Jerusalem. It doesn't say Jerusalem, it says Shalem. No, Melchizedek Melech Shalem. Melchizedek Melech Shalem. So the city of Jerusalem is older. I think that today they say that the oldest city in Israel is Jericho. I'm not sure about that. That Jericho is even older than Jerusalem.
There is the oldest Jericho close to Jericho today.
Okay, anyway, like I said, related to the relationship with other nations. So we have the example of Tzor, of Hiram Melech Tzor, And we have the example of the Plishtim. Both of them heard about David. One of them sent help, and one of them sent soldiers. Right? We can see that this two sides, right? Those who help us and those who hate us. So it started with David, and we can see that we can use the help. It's not a bad thing to get airplanes from the United States or something like that. It's not a bad thing that someone is building the house. They also help in Beit HaMikdash. Later we're going to see that he also helped with Beit HaMikdash. But it's okay that they are helping in the building of the material, of the house, of the place, even the place of Beit HaMikdash. Of course, the content to that we should put in the content inside these establishments. But cooperating with other nations that are aligned with our ideals and that they are cooperating with us, it's a positive thing, right? We are not against all the world. There is a verse that says, "An am levadad yishkon." People of Israel are alone, are isolated. Meaning, even if we are isolated, we can survive. Meaning that we should determine our values and way of living. It doesn't mean we should ignore the world. It doesn't mean that we cannot cooperate with other nations, right? So we can see that in the very beginning of the establishment of the kingdom of David, after taking Jerusalem, we have the first international cooperation. I don't remember we saw something like that in the days of Shaul. I think we didn't. Not in the days of the Shoftim. There's no any pact that was established in the day of the Shoftim. We always saw that they fought against those, they fought against those. Never a kind of pact, let's go with, I don't know, Syria against Jordan. No, it wasn't anything like that in the days of the Shoftim. Neither in the days of Yoshua. The only cooperation was with the people of Givon that was achieved by lying, by pretending to be other nation. So that was only cooperation, but we don't see any other pact during history until even in the days of Moshe, when he tried to cooperate with Moab, with Ammon, with Edom, it didn't work. All of them rejected the offer. The first time we can see someone cooperating, and it also looks that it was in his initiative. It was starting from Hiram. It wasn't David sending to him. He sent to David. So the first time we see cooperation and pact is between David, the kingdom of David, who can connect, like we said, heaven and earth and world with the kingdom of Tzor. So this is a very positive development. But unfortunately, most of the interactions with other nations in these days was of war.
Not King Shlomo. King Shlomo that came after him.
King Shlomo after that, yeah, it was all around the world. That's
only 50
yeah,
years, 40 years.
in the kingdom of Shlomo, it was in purpose. He was working on making the world the great peace. How do you say the Roman pass? So it's also the great peace of Shlomo. Pass Romano. Yeah, Pass Romano. So it was also Pass Shlomo, where he wanted to marry all. So it is a story, you know, that Shlomo married 1,000 women. What does it mean? He couldn't even remember the names, right? What does it mean that he married thousands of women? So, like we said many times, marriage in this time of the kings was actually political action. Married 1,000 women, meaning trying to make peace with all the world, right? And that was maybe too early, and that was the source, the root of the falling of Shlomo. All of that is not Hashem in Sefer Melachim. Okay, so that's what we see here, the first cooperation, international cooperation. And then we saw about the children of David. Yeah, we saw that. There are after taking Jerusalem, we have, I call that a verse of success. וילד דוד הלוך וגדול והשם אלוקי צבאות עמו. And after building the house, another verse of success. וילד דוד כי הכינו השם למלך על ישראל וכי נישא ממלכתו בעבור עמו ישראל. Right? So the first one only says he grew up, he was strong. He doesn't stay yet, he was established as a king. Only after building his house, his palace, then when it says that Hashem הכינו למלך, he will establish him as a king over Israel and exalted his kingship. Now, about the story of the kings, like children, like we said again, extending the family, it's not only personal happiness when you are a king, it's also again a sign of success of the kingdom. There is a question here about, first of all, chronologically, we see Shlomo. Shlomo is much later, after the story of Bathsheba, much later. So it's not only telling what's happening right now. It's like extending the time. And then we have here these names. There are other names in Divrei Yamin. There are another two people that don't appear here, that are in Divrei Yamin. The Mefarshim say that they died young, so that's why I'm not mentioned here. But we're going to return to that in the story of Bathsheba. In the story of Bathsheba, Natan HaNavi is going to David and tell him the metaphor of the rich man and the poor man. You know a little bit about this story? So some poor man had a sheep, Kivsat Arash, only one sheep, and the rich man once had guests, and he stole the sheep in order to give to his guests. What would be his punishment? And David said he should pay 4 times the sheep, because the Torah says, 4 ישלם תחת השור, ו5 ישלם תחת השור. 4 תחת הצאן ו5 תחת השור. כן. Yeah, 4 times, you should pay 4 times the sheep. When someone is stealing a sheep and slaughtering it, should pay 4 times. So David said you should pay 4 times. Yeah. Anyway, the question is, and Hashem told him, so yeah, that's you, the rich person, and you should pay 4 times. What is 4 times? You're going to lose 4 children. So this is one interpretation. You can say also that you're going to pay. The exact amount or the exact number is not. So we know that David lost many children. Absalom and Amnon and Tamar and Adoniyahu. And so it depends how you count it. These 2 children also may be counted. And some others say, Rav Medan says that it's actually this, Shamoah, Shovav, and Natan. We don't hear about them later. All of them died before Shlomo. Shlomo was a son that was David having with Bathsheba after the sin, after he was forgiven. But it looks like he was born right after. But according to Rav Medan saying, no, these are the people that were born before and died. So he had to pay 4 times for his sin. Okay, we're going to see all of that, Bezrat Hashem, when we arrive to this story very soon. It's not a long time. But in the meantime, what we see here, it's again the establishment of the kingdom with a lot of wives, a lot of children, a lot of palace, a lot of good things, right? And then we see about the story. So we see about the Plishtim. The Plishtim are the big nemesis since the days of Shimshon, right? We are with this Pitria since the days of Shimshon. They always return. It's not something, and they are the one who's challenging Am Yisrael in the way to have a kingdom. And this is the last time they are here. This is the time that we got rid of them. There are two wars here. And it's interesting to see that's very similar in the way that, but there are some little differences that are also important to notice. So first of all, I won't enter to all I think I mentioned a little bit about the geographical explanation, where it was exactly, in Emek Rephaim, in Jerusalem. Yeah, and it makes sense that they come from the zone of the Shfela, of Gaza and Ashkelon, and go to Jerusalem. So the natural place to have the war is in Emek Rephaim. But we have here, like I say, it's very similar, and we have a little differences that we should notice already. Well, already 40, okay. We can see that, it's not a long time. So it says, when the Plishtim heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, the Plishtim marched up. So they are kingdom of Israel, we are against it, right? There are people that are, what they don't want is a state for the Jews. Never mind what's, we see that the kingdom, we are going against that. It's exactly Plishtim. Yeah, so the Plishtim marched up in search of David, but David heard of it. And he went down to the fastness, right, to protect himself. The Plishtim came and spread out over the valley of Rephaim. We said, why now? So just in the literal level, we can say, until now, they were sure that he is with them. He was in their side until the war with Shaul. Remember that he was in their side. So they didn't know that once you go to Jerusalem, and united Olam Yisrael, this is our enemy. And now they are starting. But yeah. So David, as usual, is asking God. David inquired of God, shall I go up against the Plishtim? Will you deliver them into my hands? And God answered David, go up and I will deliver the Plishtim into your hands. So that's what's happened. Thereupon David marched to Baal Peratzim, and David defeated them there. And he said, God has broken through my enemies before me, as waters break through a dam. That is why that place was named Baal Peratzim. Okay, we can understand that again, everything. Literally, it was a big success, maybe even a little bit miraculous success. Hashem helped me, Hashem did. Oh, this is exactly David. Every success he's saying, it's from God, it's not from myself. He asked God, God help him, and he thanked him, and he named this place. The Plishtim abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them off. And of course, it is remind us the stories in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, that it was the opposite. Am Yisrael lost the battle, and they lost the ark, and the Plishtim were taking the ark. What Am Yisrael did with these idols, according to Divrei Yamim, they said they burned it. It's not that you were using it, right? So this is what they're doing. And then we have the second battle. Once again, the Plishtim marched up and spread out over the valley of Rephaim. David inquired of God, who answered, do not go up. So again, it's the same story. They're going to Rephaim. He asked God. In this time, the answer is the opposite. You shouldn't go. But circle around behind them and confront them at Baka trees. Baka trees, Bechaim, it says here. It's not very clear, this word in Hebrew. What does it mean? One of the explanations that he told him. So you in the first time you went front to front. Here, if you go in the same place, they are going to be prepared for that. You should think out of the box. You should go around, surround them, and go from the other side, from a place that you are hidden between the trees. They cannot see you, and then you go against them. But you have to wait. Only, right? And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the Baka trees, then go into action. For God will be going in front of you to attack the Plishtim forces. What does it mean that God will go before you? What does it mean, the sound of marching? So again, in the literal level, we can understand the pshat. In the plain understanding, we can say, when you hear them coming, you won't see them because you will be between the trees. When you hear them, the Plishtim marching in this place, then Hashem will be with you and you should attack. Chachamim said there were angels. When you hear the steps of the angel, then you should go out because Hashem, the angels, will be attacking before you. So the question is where level we are taking it, to the level of the unnatural or supernatural war, or still it's a natural war. I tend to go to the first explanation, it was natural, but of course Hashem with you, it's not necessarily to see miracles, to see the division of the sea or whatever. It's the success of what you are doing naturally. This is meaning that Hashem is with you. But anyway, David did as God has commanded him, and he routed the Plishtim from Geva all the way to Gaza. So very, very similar stories with two differences. First time he said, go attack. Second time he said, wait. Both of these are a test. Okay, it's a challenge. To go to a war is a challenge. He could have stayed in the stronghold where he's safe. No, you should go and fight them outside of the stronghold. This is something that requires courage and skills and effort. And this is the first test, the regular test that we have always. Should we or shouldn't we go out and fight for our life? Right? So this is the first challenge. The second challenge is not doing anything, which is not a less challenge. Sometimes to stay and wait, it's a bigger challenge. How do we know that? From Shaul. What was the first failure of Shaul? The prophet told him, you should wait for me. Don't go to the war until I arrive. And he waited and he couldn't wait. And he go out. So we see that the same test that Shaul says in the beginning of his kingdom, David has in his kingdom. And what Shaul failed, David could overcome, could achieve. We see something similar in the story of the Meraglim, right? The Meraglim, the spies in Sefer Bamidbar, Parashat Shlach, will send the Meraglim and they said, we cannot do that. We cannot stand the challenge. We cannot go to a war. Okay, this is the first challenge that David stand. Yeah, I can. I will do that. So they said, we cannot do that. And then Hashem told them, you know what? Okay, so let's go. The next 40 years, you're going to be in the desert. And then what they're saying? No, we will go now. The Ma'apilim. Remember the story that after the punishment of 40 years in the desert, say, okay, no, you know what? We regret. We did a mistake. Let's go now. And Hashem told them, you cannot go now. And they still went. What we see here, doing is hard, waiting is hard. Both things, right? It's both challenges of life. Know when to act and when not to act. And this was a test of David, and in both tests, he could, how do you say, succeed in the test or overcome the test, overcome the challenge.
Pass the test.
Pass the test, right? Pass the test. And this is the sign that David is ready to be a king, right? So, yeah, this is the story. I think, again, very important story because it shows you the beginning and the establishment of the kingdom of David about and all the important aspects of this special kingdom. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.